look later. All right, and I'm going to go back to the beginning here. So the original plan for what I wanted to do today was really two things. So on Thursday, we've set up a panel, I'll talk about in a second, of some experts to come in and talk to us about myths or potential myths that we see in like driving agility within government software, government kind of digital space. And the idea would be like, let's uncover some things that may seem like insurmountable or really difficult for us in our current positions and teams and organizations. And then talk to people who either can tell you, yeah, that's a real thing you got to deal with. It's like a uniqueness of the space that we're in, or maybe there's opportunities to kind of tackle and get past some of those things. But I wanted to do that in the framing of introducing some ideas around design thinking. So we're going to use design thinking techniques to kind of uncover some of these ideas. And in the meantime, introduce some of these concepts so folks could take those back to their teams or organizations to be able to utilize them on their own. So the goal was provide some tools, but also kind of solve a problem that we have to prepare us for Thursday. It looks like the group is just us, folks that we already know. So I'm gonna pivot slightly and change the topic area that we're gonna work through. And I think it would be useful if we use the same kind of process from a design thinking perspective, but maybe we can shift to how do we do a better job to market what we're doing here and fill these courses, right? Because we're really struggling to figure out how to get people to come to these sessions. And I think we all think they would be valuable if we can do that. So can I get a thumbs up? Does that sound like a good pivot here, considering the group? And all right, so bear with me because we're gonna kind of wing this together and figure out how to make it work, because the prep that we did was in a different direction, but we're gonna do it together and it's gonna be fun. All right, so we're gonna do not this, the thing that's on the screen here, we're gonna do something else. But this is the agenda and the things that we had planned today. We're going to do kind of an ideation workshop to kind of identify the different kind of ideas. So we're still going to do that, just different theme. And on Thursday, I think we'll maintain this panel. Maybe we'll connect after this to see if how to adjust if we need to. But we have a few people set up to come talk to us on Thursday. The first is Enrique Odi. He's currently the CTO of Second Front Systems, who just got a $32 million Series A. They're in the DoD space as well. He was a founder of Kessel Run, the commander as a colonel, as well as a founder of the Defense Innovation Unit, DIUX at the time, DIU now. He's going to come talk to us. Captain Dengler, who is a product lead at Kobayashi Maru, wanted to get an active duty kind of voice in the room as well. She's going to come with us. And then Dan, who is on the line here, just finally joined us full-time at Sagely as our head of engineering. A ton of expertise in Agile and DevOps from a technical perspective. I will be on that as well. We're going to offer the opportunity for teams around the wing to grab time with our coaches if they wanted us to facilitate any workshops, particularly for their teams, specifically, or anything like that. So that was the plan going in, and we'll see kind of how it goes with attendance and all that. Our facilitators are me and Mandy, who you all know. Cool. So the idea today, learning goals, introduction to design thinking. What is it? What do we use it for? Learn some tools you can bring back and use with your team day to day. And then 3, we're going to change to identify how might we statements for improving how we can get more people from across the wing to kind of come to these sessions that we have. Rules of engagement, video on if possible. I know it's not the case or possible for everybody. However that works for yourself. Participate, come off mute, ask questions. And then if you can get out of your comfort zone a little bit, that'd be great. Cool. So the order of events, we're going to skip number 1. I'll reframe our prompt. We're going to do some intros to design thinking. And then we're going to do 3 techniques today. We're going to do talk about the ideation technique for the wavelength folks, stuff you do all the time. I kind of want to talk about the science behind it a little bit and why it's important to kind of think about ideation in that way. Abstraction laddering, probably something you haven't seen yet. Mandy's going to walk us through this concept, as well as the generation of how might we statements and why that could be a useful framing for problem solving. Cool. All right. So this is my original kind of talk through, where I was going to talk about kind of the need for agility. I want to reframe a prompt here, and I'm going to do this kind of, I'm going to wing this a bit. So everybody can feel free to jump in and help me out here. The prompt that we're going to try to work through today is, I think we've identified that across the wing. Actually, I think this is still pretty useful. Our first session here, we talked about the mission imperative to like turning into a learning organization, right? The idea that we want to be able to consistently and constantly learn in order to improve, keep up with our enemies and our adversaries, and kind of be the organization that we want to strive towards going forward. I talked about that in November. Tori kind of came a couple of weeks later and talked about in the framing of industry, how a company's ability to adapt to change was really a direct reflection of whether or not they even survived in the long term. She walked us through how markets have adapted and how the companies within them have had to adapt to kind of the change around them. And again, we know that our enemies are changing, so we want to have a chance to be able to not only adapt to them, but get ahead of them. So we want to take the things that we're good at in our organization, improve them, ship them to our customers as fast as possible. We also heard from Colonel Kozlov, who talked about similar things during his fireside chat. I'm going to hit play. Let me know if the audio doesn't come through.
And another thing that I really prefer, and it kind of goes back again to the strategic implementation plan, is like, I want to be the kind of boss, I want to build the kind of bosses and teams that continually iterate on our product, and we're never done, right? And so we're just sort of tinkerers. Like, there's things we have to deliver, but if you think about any of the capability we deliver, the enemy is going to change, and we're going to have to change with it, right? And so just being kind of tinkerers and kind of being okay to be iterative in our approach to solving some problems with a pathway that to get there that we measure and we make adjustments off of. And so that's how I would say that.
Cool. So same kind of idea. How do we constantly kind of learn, iterate, and that sort of thing? Here, the original prompt I had was basically to take the kind of other end of the spectrum, right? Which was Amazon, who, as of a couple of years ago, is shipping into production every 11 seconds, 23,000 times per day, right? So this is kind of the kind of far off end of the spectrum. The prompt to you all really was going to be, what is keeping our organization or our team from achieving the level of agile delivery that Amazon has? And maybe the first thing that you should maybe think about here is like, that feels like unfair or irrelevant even comparison. That's exactly kind of where I want people's heads to be, is what are those things that are keeping us from being there? So we can then identify, are those things real? Are those things actually barriers, or are they myths that we can then capture? So keeping in with that framing, then we're going to talk about if we kind of can agree that this is a general idea, a general area that we want the organization to get to over time. One part of that is be able to provide learning opportunities for people to be able to attend across the wing in the various kind of roles and responsibilities that they all have. But in order to do that, we need to get them to the sessions. And I think that's been the problem for these sessions so far. So we're going to use that prompt as we go through kind of our ideation here of what can we do to increase the attendance and engagement for learners across the wing with the digital learning series. Does that feel like a good enough prompt? Anybody want to any thoughts there? Thanks, Tor. All right, let's roll with that. So the first thing we're going to do here is kind of shift gears a bit, take a little bit of an off ramp to talk about a little bit more meta process oriented frameworks. What is design thinking? Can I get one of the wavelength or 350th people to come off mute and give a shot at what design thinking is? I'll send you a Sagely sticker, whoever answers. Thanks, go ahead.
I'd say design thinking is kind of designing a product with the user and their needs in mind and making sure it best fits them.
Cool, thanks, that's great. Anybody else want to add anything? All right, so I threw some things down here. Now, I grabbed most of this from IDEO, which is a kind of world famous design and consulting firm, who was an early leader in kind of the design thinking space. And the reality is there isn't really a distinct kind of book definition of what design thinking is. It's been an evolving practice for a number of years. But you can see here, I actually really liked, this is the executive chairman for IDEO, Tim Brown. His quote is pretty good. Human-centered approach to innovation that draws from the designer's toolkit to integrate the needs of people, the possibilities of technology, and the requirements of business success. Now, said another way, you can see this kind of graphic here on the side. You see that a lot when talking about balanced teams, when we talk about product managers and design and software engineering. We're really trying to solve problems that solve for desirability, viability, and feasibility. So desirability from a user's perspective, how can we build something that they want to use? That's, you know, is desirable from their perspective. Feasibility, technically feasible from an engineering perspective. Can we actually build the thing? And then viable from a business perspective. Can we sell it? Or in your perspective, viability from a mission perspective, does it meet these kind of overarching goals that we have as an organization or an Air Force or a defense community? So design thinking is a bit of a cultural movement that puts really the user first, which really is a kind of flip from traditional DoD requirements processes over the last few decades that put really the business value or mission value first in the form of requirements generation up front. So the design thinking community has really developed a series of tools and processes that allow us to open our brains a little bit, be a bit more right brains, be more creative. When they say kind of use the designer's toolboxes or tools, that's kind of what we mean is how do we use these things that the creative community has been using for a long time and apply it to problem solving that allows for us to grow our minds a little bit and get to solutions we may not have gotten to with a linear kind of process thinking approach. On the bottom, you can kind of see the process that is generally attributed to design thinking. Okay, so we're gonna get a little bit more interactive here. For those of you who haven't yet, if you want to grab an emoji on the left side of the screen, I can pull you all to this if you're not following along. This is fun. Cool. All right. So this is where we're going to interact here. I had a prompt up here hidden. It was going to be pretty cool. Tori, do you mind replacing that one with the one we came up with above? And we're going to talk about ideation here a little bit. This is a simple practice you've all done 100 times in your life, just brainstorming. To be simple, right? When you think about where you're going to go on vacation or maybe like what friends you're going to invite to your birthday party or something like that, you take a dedicated collection of moments and think about potential options, right? But this is a practice that doesn't happen enough in a professional setting, particularly in the military. I think we tend to kind of drive towards there being a right or an objectively right solution to everything. So we're going to use some ideation here. While we get to this, there's some good practices here when running an ideation session within your own team. The design thinking community, we love sticky notes, right? We put stickies on walls or here in Miro boards virtually. But the idea of sticky notes is actually pretty important in that it's a small surface area. And when you're using Sharpies, you can't go into much detail. It allows you to stay at the right abstraction level and kind of put ideas in a number of ways. So one idea per sticky, staying high level. Ideation is also a great way to pull out good ideas from folks who may be less willing to speak out in groups. Some of us, myself included, are a little bit more comfortable speaking up in groups. So we don't have the best ideas, right? It's just a good idea to level the playing field. It's more of an inclusive practice, particularly in a military setting, right? Where the highest ranking person in the room generally has the most power in idea generation and problem solving. Same thing in businesses, highest paid person in the room, the hippo, right? So this is a good way to level the playing field a bit. And last thing, if you're facilitating an ideation session, allow for a set amount of time, but try to stretch folks if you can past a little bit where they are comfortable. There inevitably will put like kind of the obvious ones first, and then like really the magic happens when people are stretched beyond what they think is the end of their brainstorming here. Okay. So we have our prompt. We're going to say, what is keeping our organization or our team? Nope. We're going to say, what can we do? Delete. What can we do to increase the engagement with learners across the wing? All right. And we will, Mandy, well, before we do this, is this the right framing of the prompt, or should it be, what are the things keeping us, keeping people from coming? I'm trying to think of the abstraction laddering next.
I think it's fine. I think this will work. And then when we do the abstraction laddering, we'll just go through it like as a concept and as an example. And then
Cool.
this will work fine.
All right, cool. So you're gonna keep here. What can we do to increase the engagement with learners across the wing? So grab your bucket of stickies. I'm gonna put 3 minutes on the clock. There's some cool Miro music. And just add one idea per sticky in your little box. If you need to add more, just copy and paste, add some more stickies, and then we'll go through some affinity mapping right after this.
And if you can't get into Miro, Just
Oh,
put
sorry,
your
thanks.
comments in the chat.
Thanks, Troy. Yep, if you, yeah, feel free to throw your ideas in chat, and we can add them in for you. Let's go with Smooth Groove. Oh, that's perfect. And again, try to stretch yourself a little bit. If you think you're kind of out of answers, try to think of the prompt in a different way, maybe a different direction, different framing. If it's easier to think about it in forms of like, what are the blockers or barriers that are keeping people from getting here, you can kind of frame it, you're sticky that way, and we can work on the right, wording afterwards. It's just about the ideas. All right, let's do some Roman voting here. Thumbs up if you need more time, thumbs down if you don't need any more time, you're good. Good. All right, let's do 30 more seconds and we'll wrap. Oh, can't do it. 1 minute. All right, everybody try to get one more in there. Make it up. It's gonna be wild. Something about space, maybe. Rocket ships. Okay, time's up. All right, so now we're gonna do some affinity mapping or affinity clustering over here on this circular area. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna call on one of you to present your idea. If you have the same thing that somebody wrote, just put a +1 in the chat. If you have something that's like relevant or close in nature, come off mute and tell us about it. All right, Chris, can you go first?
Yes, I have in-person visits to their units.
Cool. All right, let's can you slide that over to the, I just realized it's kind of hard to see where everybody's thing is. Is this this is like you guys or us going to other units to kind of promote and tell them about it? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yes.
Cool. Anybody have the same thing? You can +1 in the chat.
I had something very similar. I just said, can we understand their development efforts better? Because I'm not sure I understand it.
Understand their needs better.
Yeah,
Cool.
I had something related to that one. I had, oh man. Hold on, I lost my place. Okay, I said interview folks in the wing to see what would get them to come to a session, just like ask them directly.
Yeah, so we'll put in-person ones, we'll bucket those together. Yeah, you guys have to help me out with this stickies. This is like it's tough to do, it turns out. All right, cool. So then we had one's a little bit different. I think interviewing, let's pull off a little bit because I think it's probably a different tactic. In-person sessions. Cool. All right, Blackjack, you got one?
Yeah, sure. I wrote multiple time options.
All right, cool. Yeah, let's throw that in the green circle by itself too. Do you mean, do we change up when the things happen or do we do the same session multiple times?
I would say multiple sessions. But yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, everything's on the table right now. Got some +1s.
I had something similar but slightly different of like different delivery options of asynchronous versus synchronous. Blackjack, would you think that's different enough from your opinion? Of your saying repeat? Or I guess Adam too. Come back either way.
I would say it's similar.
Okay, I'm gonna put it in with yours.
You're saying create the same type of learning, but like a way that they can do it on their own time. Maybe there's a way to kind of ask questions about it or something afterwards. Cool. All right. Mandy? Oh, did you do it? I don't know if you were, sorry. No, Ian.
One I had was offer college credit. Might be a little crazy, but I don't know. 4 different universities, they might have like an independent study option or something like that. So I'm not sure if this could somehow fit into that, or like CCAF degrees.
Cool. Is
But-
there anything, did anybody else have anything else around incentives? Like continuous learning credits, or like maybe they get something from their supervisor or something. Anybody can get or something like that?
Yeah, I have a learner award or tied into some type of recognition.
Cool. Let's bucket all the kind of incentive ones together somewhere. You got a bunch
Shannon
of-
put in the chat in person with donuts.
Yeah, that's probably the move. Bribes. So let's put that in the bribe section.
When in the past, when we do like user interviews, we like will have written bullets for the people that join the interviews based on like, you're saving us X amount of development hours because you're helping us de-risk the product. So I don't know, maybe some bullets or something. Also Starbucks gift cards was my other idea.
Cool. Let's do a couple more and then we'll come back and group later, just so from the sake of time. So I want to get to the laddering as well. Who didn't go? Dane, do you have audio?
Yep, I have explain how it benefits day-to-day work.
Yeah, like a better tie to mission things. Yeah, I think we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago that some of this stuff is a little bit high level when you read the way that we were kind of writing it out. It's a good one.
I had a similar one. I said use activities and prompts that would like directly help people with their daily tasks.
Yep.
Where did Dane put yours? Oh.
Shannon, did you have anything that's top of mind?
I had to target certain audiences for certain sessions. So like
Yeah.
for some of these, they're very software development focused. And I know we're trying to show them how it can be applicable to their job anyway, but we could target actually software developers within our wing. Like we could build that list. There's only about 20 plus specters, so probably less than 50 people. So we could target some of these to individual audiences and have them be, you know, like we're not expecting 2,000 people to sign in. We're expecting 50 people to sign in, right?
Yep.
That was one of my ideas.
It's great. Flash, good to see you. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so when a little bit earlier when they were talking about like the incentives, definitely the CLPs, it's a draw that I actually actively do today. That brings me to the meeting. But I was also thinking maybe something that is a little bit more public, like a leaders board or something where like you get points for attending or participating, and you know you can see how you compare to others, make it a little bit more competitive for that group of folks. But I wasn't able to figure out how to work the Miro in time.
It's okay.
To write anything down.
That's a great idea. We talked about like you know, Colonel Kozlov pushing this idea of a learning organization. It's a good way to kind of push that narrative a bit too, to make it fun and that sort of thing. Cool. See, right brain thinking. Let's do one more. Who has like an exciting one they want to share before we move on?
Hey, Adam, I got one. It kind of relevant to this stuff. It was what options we have to deliver the course material being nipper constrained.
Like the slides and that sort of thing. And
yep. So like if people were in their office have issues getting up on, let's just say Zoom Gov or whatever medium we choose, aka getting on a Miro board or.
That's good. The thing I would, we'll move on to the second part of this. The thing I would add though is maybe this goes to Morgan and doing some user research here. I'd love to know if our problem is actually just getting the message out to people or interest in coming or a combination of both. I think that'd be an answer. I'd love to figure that out.
Hey, one more quick comment before we move off is, so over 50% of our wing are actively developing mission data. So we need to start thinking about using those terms, right? Like how we have to directly tie how our premier product that's going out of the door and the majority of our workers are working on, how will this lesson apply to you, right? So if we have that in the title of the sessions, I think we will get a little bit more interest, right? Like how we can improve developing mission data by blah, right? Like using kind of some of the terms that would interest them in coming again, it may not help, but I'm just saying like I think a lot of people are struggling with, well, how does this apply to me? And so they're not attending.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. Okay. That's a good one. All right. And we'll come back and we'll move the other answers in here. I can share out like how the things grouped. And so everybody has all the ideas too. But for the sake of time, I want to kind of go down a little bit. The next prompt here was, are there places in your normal day-to-day work you could use more ideation before making decisions? I think for the Wavelength folks, you guys do this now. So maybe not as relevant with a smaller group, but I do think there are opportunities for ideation that we could use a little bit more, basically in all aspects. But I'm going to kick this over to Mandy and let her take this next section. I'll keep driving.
Cool. All right. Good morning, everyone. So I think what we're going to do for our section is we're kind of just going to introduce abstraction laddering as like a concept and a design thinking method that you can use. I'll give like a story example. I'll go through an example that we might have used for the original prompt, and then we'll kind of go off the cuff after there, depending on time, to see if we can maybe use one of the new prompts that we came up with in that generation that you just did. So maybe the like, how can we increase participation in learning opportunities could be one of the ones we end up going with, but we'll see if we get there. So what is abstraction laddering? So abstraction laddering is a design thinking method. It can be used as a way of sort of rethinking or reconsidering a problem statement or a challenge by broadening or narrowing its focus. So typically for this type of method, you would use basically a ladder almost, and that's to sort of illustrate the rungs for being able to go up and down the ladder. If you can go to frame 13 for me, Adam, just so I can talk through it visually. Perfect. So basically you would have this little ladder that's on the side. You start with a challenge statement that's sort of in the center, and you'd work your way through it by going up the ladder, asking yourself why from that original statement, and down the ladder, asking yourself how from that original statement. And basically kind of trying to stay on brand with the theme of this week that was supposed to be myth busting in government. I'm still going to give the same example that I was going to use about this kettle. So I'm going to walk through an example using abstraction laddering as a way to challenge a problem's constraints. So abstraction laddering is great for understanding a problem. And this example that I'm going to walk through also reveals how you can take that to the next level and sort of identify the forces influencing your product or challenge using abstraction laddering to influence those constraints or enablers around that. So the story actually comes from Ryan Singer. Ryan Singer is a product designer at a company called Basecamp. Basecamp is a project management software company. And what he talks about is designing a kettle. So he talks about all of these forces that are acting upon the kettle. So if your job is to design the kettle, you might know that the kettle gets like put on a stove. So the bottom of the kettle is influenced by the stove. So it's got to be flat. You know that the kettle gets hot, so you have to create a handle to make sure that someone can move the kettle safely. Maybe someone's far away from the kettle, so it has to have a loud whistle, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, you have all of these different things that are forces acting upon the kettle. And so what Ryan ends up challenging is, well, what if your problem is actually to get water hot rather than to design a kettle? Basically using this abstraction laddering design thinking method by moving like one level up or possibly even two levels up the abstraction ladder from going to how to design a kettle to asking yourself why and getting to it's to get water hot. And by doing that, suddenly all of the forces that were acting upon the design of that kettle completely change. So abstraction laddering has the ability to really impact our thinking about the problem that we're working on. But the other reason, it's sort of like a secondary reason, but why I like this method a lot, is it also has the ability to influence those constraints. So those things that might be getting in the way of success and really challenging your preconceptions about an idea. So what I was going to do next after talking through the example was to kind of give you a more tactical real world example using something that we generated from above. So Adam, do you want to just go to the next one and we'll kind of just go off the cuff, I guess, on this one. So I'm going to give just an example. We're going to walk through, let's see, I'm going to do the one that we had hidden here for just to show you how it would kind of work. And then we'll see if you guys have ideas for doing it with the new prompt. So as an example for this challenge statement, I put reducing employee turnover as like sort of that initial challenge statement as an example to sort of walk through this as like a real world challenge. If you were to go up the ladder asking yourself why, does anyone have any input on what they think a why would be? I have some pre-canned ones as well, but I'm hoping that you guys have some ideas.
Hey.
That's always a good one. Workload. That's good too. I had so the why. So if you're asking yourself why, one that I put here could be like, why is there employee turnover? military rotations are unavoidable. So like there's going to be some level of turnover that's kind of inevitable here. And then another why as to why you would want to reduce employee turnover could be reducing like retraining costs. From this level of abstraction, sort of the next thing that you can do is get to like a problem statement. So maybe getting to this level of abstraction sounds good. So we wanted to sort of frame this as a new question. So an example could be, well, military rotations are unavoidable. So there's going to be some sort of employee turnover no matter what. How might we provide like better succession plans, better documentation so that you're able to, you know, maintain a level of being able to just jump into a role and sort of catch up quickly and that type of thing. So this is an example of a how might we statement or a statement starter that you can build from this level of abstraction that you started down here. And a couple other ones, I know you guys mentioned pay and workload. I think I ended up putting those in my how. So how might you reduce employee turnover? I think I put getting more feedback, higher competitive wages, which I think is where Troy was going with his. And then you could sort of go down one more level and say like, why do you need more feedback, or why do you need competitive wages, building different teams, etc. So you could build statement starters off of it that way. So this was the example I was going to walk through on the original intent for this exercise. But I think what we should do is try to use the same method. Well, actually, let me just pause really quick and see if anyone has any questions about the method. Does the method itself make sense to you? Did the story about the kettle sort of influence the way that you think you might be able to use this in your real life and sort of get that original problem statement or challenge statement to different levels of abstraction to help you influence the constraints or enablers around that challenge or problem statement?
Hey, Mandy, for me, the walkthrough of what we just did actually made more sense than the kettle for me.
Cool. No, that's good feedback. Anybody else?
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Cool.
Mandy, just one more time, can you explain why you put pay as a how might we and not the above ladder component?
Sure. Yeah. So I think when I was going through it, when I originally had here, like how, for the challenge statement of how do you reduce turnover, asking myself how from there versus why, like it was more solution-y to me to be able to have competitive or higher wages. But you can also use the same thing in both. Like there's no rule against that. If you think that it's a why and a how, you can definitely add it in both places, which is why I ended up, you know, putting pay and workload into the why as you guys were mentioning it, but also wanted to call out that it could be a how as well. Also, when you're going through this design thinking method, like the level of abstraction that you start with, it might end up being the right level of abstraction. So that happens sometimes too, where you're going through it and you're like, you know what, I think that this is the right level. But just taking those few extra minutes to sort of let yourself get to those new levels of asking why and how, either one level up or two levels up and one or two levels down, really just allows you to open up those opportunities and see if the drivers or like the forces sort of acting upon that challenge statement change by just doing that one simple thing. So I think that's why this method can be really powerful, and it's really simple to do in like your day-to-day work. If your boss comes to you with a challenge, kind of just like go through this and see if there's a better way to tackle it.
Yeah, two things that I like about this, Mandy. Actually, I learned about this week in working with Mandy on this. I didn't know about this particular exercise. And I tend to be somebody who goes straight to solutions in my brain. So it's really hard for me sometimes to like take a step back and think about like why I ended up there or how I got there. So using this kind of forces me to do that. The other note I would mention too, to Tori and Mandy's kind of question there, particularly when you're facilitating things a little bit harder, but when you are using these for your own team and thinking about how to problem solve, the framework isn't important, right? The framework is just there to drive your ability to come up with new solutions and think critically and that sort of thing. So don't get caught up too much in how to do this correctly to make the thing end up like we saw here or some framework thing you saw online. The idea is that it's driving you to think in a different way, and the things that you come up with are really the important part. So these are all just tools, but you can adapt them however you need to.
Yeah, totally good point. All of these are super customizable. You can use them in whatever capacity makes the most sense. The intent is just to make sure that you're able to have these design thinking methods kind of in the back of your pocket, so that if you wanted to just rethink or re-challenge, these are great ways to do that. Let me read the chat really quick. Yeah, totally, Morgan. Awesome. So we have like 15 minutes left. I think we should maybe go through one of these with the new prompt of how to increase participation in these learning opportunities. The other option would be getting into some statement starters or how might we statements. Adam, do you have a preference?
I don't, sorry.
No, you're good. Does anyone else have a preference on what they'd rather do? Either go through this design thinking method one more time with the new prompt, or sort of getting into how might we statements from the generation that you guys did above with Adam.
Oh, the other question? Yeah, let's go through this once. I do have an opinion. I think we end up with the how might we statements kind of organically.
Sounds good. Okay, so let's start with, let me just get rid of all of these extra ones. But so that we're gonna put the challenge statement in the center of how to increase participation in these learning opportunities. And if folks can either add things into the chat or just call them out and I'll type them in. Let's go up one level first into the why, and then we'll go down one level into the how. We'll challenge ourselves to get a couple in each, and then we'll try to build some how might we statements off of those. So how might we increase participation in learning opportunities? Why would we want to do that? What's a reason that we would want to increase the participation in those learning opportunities?
To solidify the Wings identity as a learning organization and teach people how to be a learning organization.
Love it.
I would say that we want to put more tools in the Wings toolbox, if you will. Like I don't know how else to say that. Create new methods and ways to solve problems.
I think essentially we want to make the wing more efficient, right? We want to increase the wing's capability.
How about someone put to improve morale and have stronger teams, or is this an extra one?
There's a couple in the chat too.
Oh, awesome. Thanks.
I was trying to add the ones from the chat.
Oh, thank you, Morgan.
You know, if we think back to Shannon's comment earlier too, like this is probably a good opportunity for us to tie this to the mission itself, right? Like our hypothesis is that building the wing into a learning organization will make us more effective at achieving the mission. So we should probably make sure we include that as one of the kind of whys here, right?
What's this one? Because good isn't good enough. We have to continue to be better by learning and failing fast. It's a good one. Awesome. I see people are still adding some in here. While we're adding some of the additional whys, if you want to start thinking about any of the hows. So how are we going to increase participation in learning opportunities? Like what are some reasons or some ways that we can think of the how? I think some of these might be direct copy and paste from what you guys were coming up with above. You had a lot of really great hows, but let's sort of come up with, either we could do the groupings of them that we kind of did in each of these, or just pull down a couple that really hit home for you that we thought were great ideas. And we'll add those in here. This one.
Do you want us to pull them in the Miro board or just shout them out via Zoom?
Whatever's easier. If you shout them out, I can type them in.
Offer more incentives to attend?
We could, have more involvement of maybe doing like options on topic selection or even meeting times, combining a couple things. Of letting people choose what they would like to learn about.
So additional meeting times and like scoped engagements. Does that sort of cover both?
Yep, I think that's fair.
Okay. Awesome. And then the other thing that we can do here now is to get some statement starters from these levels of abstraction. So the original challenge statement is already sort of a statement starter and like how to increase participation. This is going to basically give you that at a different level of abstraction. So if we then consider mission support as the why to the original challenge statement, a statement starter here could be how do we, or how might we message learning opportunities to support the mission or for mission support. And so you're getting, again, that level of abstraction that's a little bit different and framing the problem a little bit different and more targeted. Does that make sense to the team?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
So basically you're going from, this is already in of itself, sort of one of your statement starters, or how might we statement, by how might we increase participation in learning opportunities. You go one level up saying, okay, why do we want to do that? We want to support the mission or mission support. Then you can create a new how might we statement from that level of abstraction. That's basically saying, how might we message these learning opportunities to support the mission or something to that effect. So you're kind of tackling this original statement from a separate level of abstraction that might be easier or more targeted to actually start building solutions from.
So we're just getting more kind of specific and like zeroed in on whatever that lane is in order to try to solve for the main one, right?
Mm-hmm. Does anyone want to take a hack at building another one from here? So if you, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ian.
So something like maybe like, how might we foster a culture of doing the mission differently?
You got it.
So I should move this one down to the Y. Or maybe
I mean, I think that it kind of makes sense there, but yeah.
That's what it was a while, but then I was reading, I was like, well, it kind of goes there. So.
I think it was a happy accident, but yeah, I think if you're creating new resources and new opportunities for the wing, a good how might we statement would be, we could just reframe it as how might we continue to grow fast, continue to learn and fail fast, or something to that effect. But you can either pull it down into the why, or you can just reframe it as a how might we statement. I think it makes sense either way. I think it's a good one.
One thing to note on these how might we statements too, as you use them throughout in your day-to-day, and the reason we wanted to put it here in the context of like myth busting as an example, it's a great tool for finding a thing that like looks insurmountable. You'd be like, well, we can't do that because it's SAP systems, whatever. Okay, it's probably true, but how might we figure out how to deliver said thing to whatever, right? It allows like an opening for innovation to potentially occur in a place where you don't really see it being feasible on the surface. So whenever you kind of run up into one of those problems, it's a great tool for, again, expanding our minds a little bit to kind of tackle it maybe a different way than seems super obvious.
I think the other, oh, go ahead, Morgan.
Sorry, Tori. I was gonna say another thing for the wavelength team also is often when we're in like user interviews and you hear a user say something and you immediately think of a solution, sometimes rather than like writing down that solution, I'll write down like a how might we solve that user's problem, like whatever they said, because it kind of keeps the door open to like more solutions. It doesn't lock you into like the thinking of like, this is how we're going to build it, you know. It kind of keeps a broader exploration there.
I think the other thing to add is just as you seem like Adam, as he's facilitating, he's called on people to make sure we're getting that diverse perspectives. And so there's a value of making sure when you're doing these drills, you have people from different areas to get that diversity of thought. But there is also value of doing it at a smaller team for a scoped issue. It's just, or a scope problem set. I think it's just, again, as he said earlier, using the tool and knowing what you're using it for, or if you're introducing bias, right? If you do it with a small team, you might have introduced that bias and you might want to kind of make sure you're putting those stage gates in faster for feedback.
Good point. All right, so we can read through, I guess, some of the how might we's that we've come up with so far. And feel free to add additional ones. But a couple that we have so far: how might we foster new ideas? How might we solidify the wing's identity as a learning organization? How might we message learning opportunities in a way that supports the mission? And how might we foster culture of doing mission differently? Is that what that says? Sorry, someone's clicked on it, so it's like all grayed out.
Sorry, that's supposed to be a culture. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. That makes sense. Cool. Any other examples that we want to do? So this one, to create new resources for the wing. Is there a good how might statement from there?
How might we create new resources for the wing?
Yeah, some of them can be like really just like a copy paste, or you can think of like different levels of going about it too, but I think that works too. What was this one over here? More effectively spread out the experience, expertise that Sagely has to offer to the wing. The current state of business will never be sufficient for future fights. Current state has to consistently be moving forward. Good. And then some of these hows are good too. Making it mandatory, advertise, better visibility, more deliberate inclusion of individual units and their mission, additional meeting times or scoped engagements, having learning be criteria for quarterly award package, etc. So those are all great. I appreciate everyone's thoughts here. We have 2 minutes left, so I don't know, Adam, if you want to talk
That's okay.
about.
Yeah, we can wrap it here. A couple of things I wanted to note. These are just two of like a thousand or dozens of tools that design thinking can provide for us, and we'll introduce more and more as we go. We're also going to start doing a better job of packaging these and providing them to you in the form of things like facilitation guides and things that you can take and have in like the wavelength library to use kind of when you need and have that support. So you don't always need kind of a human to help you. So more of that to come as well. As far as the work we did here, thanks for allowing the pivot. I think that was really useful to us at least. So we'll work through collecting all those ideas and affinity mapping. We'll send that out to folks too, just so everybody can see where we ended up, and we'll try to use that to our advantage. Last thing here, on Thursday, we do still have the panel scheduled currently. I'll connect with folks offline to see if that still makes sense with the kind of attendance questions and that sort of thing. But some more to follow on that. Really appreciate you all participating and coming, and hopefully some of these things were useful for your team. And feel free to share any feedback or any thoughts with any of the Sagely folks you work with. Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Thank you.